dead man walking. You might have heard this phrase before. Say, to refer to the man who forgot his 50th wedding anniversary. Or the person who just accidentally sent an I love you text to their boss. Or worse, their boss's spouse. In more serious terms, it could refer to somebody who accidentally wired the company funds to their personal Swiss bank account. Oops. But even in more serious terms is the original use of the phrase, coined in early 20th century American prisons to describe a man who was condemned to death and would be led down the corridor by guards to his execution, to the chorus of other prisoners who would say, "Dead man walking." In the years since, it has gained popularity through books such as The Green Mile and, aptly named, Dead Man Walking, as well as their respective movie adaptations, and has also developed its more flippant cultural connotations as evidenced previously. But in every case, to refer to somebody as a dead man walking is to say that they are alive and well, but not for long. At best, a consequence is looming. At worst, death is staring them in the eyes. Like the original use of this phrase in the early 20th century of these United States, as Jesus on Good Friday was condemned and led to execution on a cross, he was, to everyone there, even his disciples, a dead man walking. And to the disciples and everyone gathered there who witnessed his horrible execution on the cross, he was now fully dead, no longer walking. His body placed in the tomb, and any shred of hope was then sealed shut. Nothing else was humanly possible. Jesus was dead until the impossible happened. First, it was the women who saw the stone rolled away from the tomb and were witnesses. They saw and they heard about his resurrection, and they went to tell the male disciples, but they didn't believe them. Shocking. And then, as we hear in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus appeared to two disciples on the road to Emmaus. And then, as we hear today, Jesus suddenly appeared to the 11. And as the account says, the disciples were startled and terrified. They thought they were seeing a ghost. Because there before them was Jesus, a dead man, walking. Jesus, somehow no longer dead, but alive, somehow in the flesh, but not limited by it, able to appear and disappear. To us who hear this account, it's words spoken from out of the book of our fates. But to them who experienced it, it happened before their very eyes. Their reactions, a testament to the obvious fact that resurrection is not normal. So much so that while in their joy, they were disbelieving and still wondering. Imagine that. While in their joy, they were still disbelieving and still wondering. Even in joy, they couldn't believe. Even in joy, they were reticent. Even in joy, that joy was muted by doubt. Because to them, Jesus was a dead man, literally. And what did this newly risen, undead Jesus do? Well, sure enough, he was hungry. I bet you would be too if you had just risen from the dead. So he took a piece of fish and he ate it in their presence. And as with those on the road to Emmaus moments before, it was in the meal that he opened their minds to understand the truth about the Scriptures, that the Messiah is to rise from the dead on the third day, that repentance and forgiveness of sins is to be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning in Jerusalem, and that they who were there were witnesses to these things. My friends, I will now state an obvious fact. We were not there when Jesus died. We were not there when Jesus rose on the third day. And we were not there when Jesus said these words to those disciples. So check, check, check. But we too are liable to doubt. We too, even in our joy at the truth in front of us, can be disbelieving and uncertain. And yet we, like them, are living witnesses to these things. We are the ones who are to be witnesses to the world in this time and in this place. How will you be witnesses to these things? How will we, as St. James, be witnesses to these things? Even in our joy, will we be guided by disbelief and wondering, or by the assurance of what Christ has done? Even in our joy, will we be guided by feelings of scarcity, or by the assurance of God's abundance? To fall into the thinking that, despite whatever we have, it will never be enough. That the more we seem to have, the more we feel that we stand to lose. Put another way, when we look in the mirror at ourselves and we look at our neighbors or we look out at the world, will we see ourselves, our church, our world, as dead men walking, living as if Jesus were still in the tomb? Or will we trust that Christ is risen and that we will live and walk in love forever? To live out that posture of abundance over scarcity, of resurrection over death, is what it means to live as Easter people, assured always of the good news of the resurrection. So lest you think I'm telling you to flip a switch, to just stop worrying, to just forget about suffering, to not be mindful of challenges, to stop planning for emergencies, I would not be delivering a word of genuine or practical advice. But to live with a posture of abundance rather than scarcity means to see and know that through Christ, the challenges of this moment, the scarcities, the worries, the anxieties of what's to come. And they are there, even as evidenced yesterday by more violence in the Middle East. These things that we should be worried and consumed about at times should not, I dare say, actually rather, need not consume or control us. As Jesus reminds the disciples, we are no longer dead men walking. As this Paschal candle burns in these great 50 days of Easter, we see an example that the light shines in the darkness, and darkness did not overcome it. That the dead man has risen and walks again. So as we celebrate this Easter season and beyond, whenever those feelings of scarcity or anxiety start creeping in and guiding you in your thoughts and in your decisions, when even in your joy you are disbelieving and still wondering, remember to refocus your attention towards God's abundant, reliable, and ever-burning light. That light which burns within you. And let that light be your guide. A light to guide where God is leading us always, to see and know that we are not dead men walking, but a risen people, following where God has paved the way to a place of abundance far beyond what we can scarcely imagine.